Hello friends, welcome to today's video. These are the best knives that I have reviewed on the channel so far. Fixed blades, of course. Most of my interests are woods knives, bushcraft knives. Not so much hunting, but when the blade geometry incorporates those elements, it's always good if it does not hinder the bushcraft and chem/woods performance. So I have brought out here 3 of the very best fixed blades that I've reviewed on the channel. They are all different and unique in their own ways. Okay, so let's start from right to left. This is the Muthos Homura MH015. It does not come with these G10 scales that have this hammered texture. These come with wooden scales, just like their previous and smaller model, which is the MH001. They call this prominence, so you can see here prominence MH001, and then we have their upgraded model, and I'll explain why I call this the upgraded model, prominence MH015. So prior to discussing anything else, let's discuss these 2. I do have detailed reviews, so this won't be a detailed review of any of these knives. You can search for any of them on my channel and you will find detailed reviews. What I absolutely love about the knives is what I'll emphasize on and why I've selected them as the best knives reviewed on the channel so far. This is an absolute beast and a workhorse for firecraft. If you're out in the woods making fire, out of my entire collection, the Muthos Homura, the prominence line, performs absolute best. Nothing comes close. I have thick, full convex knives, flat grinds, etc., saber grinds, some that are thicker than this. But I have not found any knife as enjoyable and interesting to use for wood splitting, feather stick making, which I don't do much. We don't really have a requirement for feather sticking in this region. You can get to the dry wood or drier parts of the wood relatively easy. And yes, I do need fine kindling, but what I do instead of feather sticks is, if you're the subscriber of the channel, you know that I mostly use spines, and I scrape. Now there's slight wind and it's taking away the shavings, but you get much finer shavings, well ground 90-degree spine. So what does this knife have going for it? Extremely sharp 90-degree spine, so taking skin off of your sticks, branches, doing the fine feathers, you see, just seconds. And this catches fire steel spark much easier than any type of a conventional feather stick, you know, done the usual way. It also has a very nice belly, as you can see here. Because it has a convex on one side, it is a rather robust blade. I have not found the need to resharpen this yet. I haven't given it crazy use, but I've batoned, I've feather sticked, prepared a few fires, and all I've had to do is strop it on a leather strap. This is their proprietary steel, which they didn't really tell me what kind of steel it is, but they did say it is very similar to Elmax, so it's their version of Elmax. It is stainless steel, it has not rusted on me. The previous version, as you can see, is significantly smaller. So I would say it is a bit less capable in terms of the size of logs that it can split, but a very well balanced and actually easier to carry size, as you can see. Again, identical blade shape geometry wise, and so for its relative size of wood, it performs identical to the larger brother. Some notable differences. This was their first prominence model. They only have 2 prominence models, and it did have some slight kinks that I had to brush out. Specifically, this was on the handle side. These holes were not chamfered, and the edges also here were a bit too sharp here as well. All I needed was some fine grit sandpaper, say 600, maybe 5 minutes of sanding this down. And also I used a convex stone to chamfer these holes so that they're not sharp anymore. You can easily move your hands around, touch anywhere you want, and it is now smooth. In terms of finishing, it's flawless. There is no edges sticking out. The scales are fitted perfectly, and if you do get this knife, I would suggest, of course, to remove the scales when you're doing those fine touch-ups. They have done their research, they've received feedback, and all of those kinks were ironed out on the next model, the Prominence MH015. They have improved this notch here, has a much better grip in your hand. They have chamfered, if you can see here, up to the point where you would need to use your spine. Everything else is chamfered. So are these lanyard holes, also chamfered. So even though the spine or the tang section of the knife slightly protrudes beyond the scale, maybe by a millimeter, millimeter and a half, you barely notice it, and it is quite comfortable. One tiny upgrade that I did to this scale is when this scales, this hammer texture G10 comes to you from the factory, it is actually quite sharp on the corners. So I just went over it with, again, fine grit sandpaper, and I sanded it down, still maintaining the incredible grip. Because of all these dents that it has, but I did notice that, like on this point, for example, it would give me a hot spot while using, and on other places as well. Now that I've just went over with fine grit sandpaper, and I do want to show you specific, like you see these points here that are flattened, they used to be sharp. Everywhere now they're slightly flattened, and you will barely notice a difference in terms of visual, but a huge difference in the feel of the knife. So I would strongly recommend Muthos Homura. I know that you will be watching the video. This is a much better utility level of finishing than from the factory. So I would humbly suggest that you should break off those corners with fine grit sandpaper. That's the only upgrade that I've done to this. And one more thing, the sheaths are made of very high quality full grain leather. I don't know what specific leather it is, but it is very high quality, clearly. I do prefer their previous model though. They have some improvements here. As you can see, the knives will push against the scales, will push against these points. There is a slight dent on this pin right here. So they could have used, I guess, a thread instead of a pin here, but the overall retention of the MH001 is significantly better. This system works much better than their upgraded MH015. Visually, this seems like it works, and it does to an extent, and then this pops out. So I do like the sheath, and you could just leave it as is and use it as is, but I do plan to do a sheath upgrade on this and put a Kydex sheath on this. Of course, that video will also be on the channel. Absolutely love this knife because there is a craze on feather sticking. Let me demonstrate. From the convex side, it does a really fine job. And what makes it easy, there is no secondary bevel. So this flat grind goes all the way down, enabling you to simply set the knife flat onto that side. And there we go. You don't really have to find a spot. The knife gives you the spot, that flat side. And you go away doing feather sticks. And there we go. And that'll catch a spark. The second best knife that I've reviewed, and I will leave the White Rivers for the end. The second best knife is the Olive Arbor, which is, as I've said already a few times, it is a tank of a knife. Very robust build, G10 scales. They have now upgraded to have screwable scales now. They have 2 screws with holes actually, so you can still put a lanyard if you find the need for that. The handle is very well contoured, absolutely no hot spots, rounded off, crowned tang all along the scales, and their trademark Fibonacci grind. They have Venari model, which is a smaller hunting slash skinning kind of knife that I hope that I will eventually get on the channel. I've been asking them. They've promised but have not yet delivered. So Olive Knives, please send me the Venari knife so that I can do a detailed review on it. Elmax steel, if I remember correctly, it is hardened 61 and above, so pretty good HRC on it. And the Fibonacci grind acts similar, very similar to a convex grind, but is easier to maintain for beginner users and has some benefits in food prep because it's not a continuous round. It has these sectional flats. Pieces will fall off, whether it's meat, cheese, or your tomatoes. This is a more enjoyable experience slicing stuff. Let's demonstrate the feather sticking. So it does a very fine job with feather sticking. As you can see, I would say ideal size in terms of a universal bushcraft slash camp knife. Very enjoyable overall, and again, very unique, interesting premium materials, and very, very well designed, robust Kydex sheath. I'd have to say this is one of the best out of the factory sheaths that I have in my knife collection. There's this rubber barrel type of thing that is screwed down, and it acts as a very comfortable thumb ramp. The locking action is actually done on the other side. Some people think this is the locking. No, it's just a comfortable thumb ramp, and it is a unique, you'll see, of course I'll leave links to all of the knife brands, and when you see their designs, which they only have 3 knives so far, it's the Arbor, the Venari, and the Lenta, which is their fixed blade. Very unique carbide blade, and they also use Elmax, so they have 2 versions on that. Hopefully I'll get that for a detailed review as well. Highly recommend Olive Knives Arbor. If you're our outdoorsman, you like bushcraft, etc., you need this in your collection. And I've kept the best for the last. What makes these knives the best out of the assortment that I've shown here is actually several things. First would be the combination of price and the performance and quality that you receive, so value for money, in other words. I think, and this is subjective, it is personal, and different people will have varying reactions to this, but I think these are the most universal blades. White River did a great job coming up with this blade geometry, handle combination. Even though this is Lucas Carl scales, I do have a discount code for you in the description, but neither of the models, the Ursus Cub or the Ursus 45, require a scale upgrade. It's just an improvement, I would say, if you can afford and you get the Lucas Carl scales. If you use these knives hard for a long time, etc., you will see the difference. The original scales on both of these knives are very, very good, very comfortable, very slick, smooth. But I personally do appreciate a palm swell. You see how much of a palm swell this blade has. Similar here, I do like the thinning in this section, and just the overall geometry is a significant improvement, but not a necessity. I do have a lot of very good blades where the scales required an upgrade. These don't. Okay, so we have Magna Cut steel on this. We have high saber grinds, and of course with a saber you do have the secondary bevel. It's not a full flat. And in terms of the sizing, I actually found the Ursus Cub a absolute perfection in terms of EDCing a fixed blade. It is way more capable than the size would suggest. Proportions of this is the absolute minimum that you would need for a full secure grip. You see, I do have all of my fingers. I wear size large to XL size gloves, and I have a very, very secure grip on this. but I would also call the blade length a minimum for a full-size usable outdoors knife. This is very, very capable and a bit deceiving visually, especially when put beside the Ursus 45. The Ursus 45 is what you would comfortably call a full-size bushcraft outdoors knife. Because these are MagnaCut steel, they don't require excessive thickness. They're very wieldy, so they're not a master in any trade, but they are a perfect middle ground, universal shape. What they've also done is they've centered the point. So if you run a line down in the middle, you'll come to this point, which is very good for making holes if you find the need to drill holes in wood. They have very good blade geometries. Again, I will demonstrate feather sticking with them. So this is the Ursus cub. Very easy to control. You can do, as you can see, very fine, or you can go thicker. I love the cub. And the more you develop your skills, you'll find that you don't really need huge knives unless you're using them for wood splitting and chopping. The smaller the knife, up to a certain point, of course, easier it is to manipulate and use for a prolonged period of time. They do have very sharp spines, both of them. This is what I mean by not making feather sticks. When I do a fire, I prep kindling like this rather than the feather sticks. And let me do the same with the Ursus 45. So the blade geometry is identical to the Ursus cub. The only difference is in the size. So you can do very fine feathers. And again, very sharp spine. Giving you very fine shavings. So if I was to go out in the woods, I would probably, if the only knife I'm taking, I would take the Ursus 45. If I have something larger as well, or a saw, I would take, especially on longer hikes, the Ursus cub. These are both significantly cheaper US-made MagnaCut steel. So if we compare it to the other best knives on the channel, they outperform in terms of steel material. They outperform in terms of mobility and carryability. I have not touched on the sheaths, which are absolutely outstanding sheaths. You would expect this type of detail and quality from a custom sheath, which alone, a sheath like this, would cost you anywhere above $60. This knife is usually sold at around 170 USD, USA-made MagnaCut from a reputable brand like White River Knives. So great, I would say unbeatable value for money. That to me makes this the best out of the options. Now, if I was to single out each, I would go with Ursus 45. This would be a runner-up. Then we have the olive knives Arbor, which does not have a runner-up because I don't have the Venari here. But I think it would be a runner-up because from what I've seen, that's also a very, very nice blade. And then we would have the Muthos Homura MH015 with the MH001 being a close runner-up. So let's place them like so. The best out of the three, one knife option, I would take the Ursus 45. For wood splitting specific tasks, definitely this beats all of them. This would be the second, and olive knives Arbor would be the third for wood splitting. For universal use, as I've said, it would be the Ursus 45. Then it would be the olive knives because it is of a similar size. Then probably a tie between these two. This would be a more universal knife because the Muthos Homuras do have a specific blade geometry, and this would be a bit challenging to sharpen in the field. Segue in terms of comfort, as I've already mentioned, all of them have absolutely fine, comfortable scales from the factory. Slight upgrade required to the G10 scales on the Muthos Homura, no upgrade required on the wooden scales. I did change the scales on the White Rivers, but they didn't require it. I just reached out to Lucas Carls, asked him to send me a few scales to try out and recommend to you guys and girls if I like them, and I love them, and I do recommend them. Absolutely no upgrades required or done on the olive knives. Recently, I've partnered with Slickman, and Slickman is a new brand, relatively new brand, founded by a welder. They started off with welding gloves, and I believe this was their first model, 716. Then they came out with 820, which are padded inside, and they also have a bunch of general work gloves. Why I'm showing you this, or why I reached out to them, is actually for construction DIY projects. As I've already mentioned, I'm building a house, a 3-story house, which I've done a new channel for. I didn't want to throw in construction content onto this channel. This is more EDC outdoors type of channel with some DIY projects, of course, but they're more related to EDC items. So when I modify knives, scales, when I sometimes build my own watches, tool watches to be specific, etc. But because I love the outdoors, I work physically, do manual labor, I do require good quality gloves, and it's difficult to find good leather, well put together, well sewn gloves using Kevlar and just good experience and knowledge. So why I'm showing you this now is because these gloves, which are leather work gloves from Slickman, and as I said, they do have an assortment. Other than welding specific gloves, they also make work gloves. I was very, very pleasantly surprised. Some of these gloves, like this one, for example, yes, it does have this skeleton texture, but the gloves themselves are like dress gloves quality in terms of the leather, in terms of the stitching. Everything is extremely comfortable, and I have used it. I've used this one specifically and these gloves while doing some work with the knives, and I found them very, very comfortable. I will have a discount code for this as well. It's not an affiliate link yet. Hopefully they'll set up an affiliate link and that will support the channel if you use those links. But at this point, if you are in need of very good quality, full grain leather work gloves or outdoors bushcraft kind of gloves, I would highly recommend this model. This is the Slickman X, and I would also recommend this model. This, I believe, is their simplest leather glove. Again, very comfortable. And because these are designed by a welder, a person that actually does physical labor, he has done a great job. He knows what a worker would need, and he has emphasized those points while designing these gloves. I will have detailed reviews on the working gloves as well as the welding gloves coming up soon, while I'll be doing some welding, also testing a Yes welder that I recently received. Okay, so there we go. Let me finish this off. These three are the best fixed blades that I have reviewed on the channel so far, in my opinion. Please share your feedback. Tell us what your mileage has been, if you've used any of these knives, and stay tuned for more. Cheers.